pleased to present for your consideration.
Welcome back to the Jabberbox Podcast, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Bond, and with me, as he has been all day and all weekend, Dan Singleton. What's going on, Dan? How is that Square-Enix thing? That conference?
In my opinion, it was terribly disappointing. There was quite a few problems.
So we are continuing on with day 2 of E3 conference. We just came off of the Square-Enix one. Before that, we had the Microsoft Bethesda showcase, which really set the bar for today. And it looks to be like that was the highlight of the day. Because unfortunately, the Square-Enix one was a bit disappointing to me. And it seems that Dan is echoing that statement as well. So let's go ahead and get into what we saw. See what we have to say for that. The first one up that they had, which was actually an extended look at the new Guardians of the Galaxy video game done by the same guys who did the Avengers video game, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos, I believe.
Yes. So I know we've been talking a lot this weekend about how we're getting short like little glimpses into games, and we're like, hey, there's not a lot of context here. What's the gameplay look like? We don't know anything about it. Cool, thanks for letting us know, but that doesn't tell us anything. They told us a lot about this Guardians of the Galaxy game that they're coming out with, and it was too much. Like, how long was that? 15 minutes maybe of gameplay? And it was
10,
boring,
something like that.
It was boring, it was clunky, it was formulaic, generic. Like, it was just, okay, why are you showing this to us? This doesn't make it more intriguing. Thanks for showing me gameplay. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't need 15 minutes of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, we don't, but at the same time, you gave me a perfect example and layout of a game that I am not going to play. You know what I mean?
Also true.
The game, I got the same feeling with watching the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer as I did with the Avengers trailer. The character models don't look great. The voice acting is not great. The gameplay looks boring. I was bored watching that, so I'm not going to play it.
I'm just going to say that game looks like it's already 6 to 8 years old, and it's coming out in just a couple months.
Which was the same thoughts that were being echoed for the Avengers when that came out last year, 2019, when they showed that off. You know, these Marvel's doing these games. It's Marvel's Avengers, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. They're trying to capitalize. They're trying to do this gamerverse, right? Where Marvel's Spider-Man that Insomniac did, Marvel's Miles Morales Spider-Man, those games are fantastic. They're phenomenal, and they're trying to capture the same magic, and you're not doing it. So,
it was especially
it's 2 different teams.
It was especially confusing because they followed up with talking about how they're going to be doing an expansion for Avengers with the Black Panther expansion, and I know that game is struggling. So releasing Guardians of the Galaxy as its own standalone game when it's almost identical to Avengers with a different skin on it, different title, you're only going to be pulling away from a game that you've made that's already struggling. I mean, it's not like you're going up against a competitor. It's your own content. It's your own game that you've made, and you're making basically a clone of it, and then you're going to compete against it. It makes no sense, business sense. Like, it's such a weird decision that they made to make that a standalone instead of an expansion of a game that is struggling under their watch as it is.
Right. Yeah, so they've been doing DLC packs for Avengers. You know, March showed that they had Hawkeye came in. That was, I believe it was last year. Spring, then they had the Tachyon Anomaly, the Red Room Takeover. They're working on doing the Cosmic Cube, the Wasteland Patrol, and War for Wakanda for Avengers. Guardians of the Galaxy, as you stated, that looks like it should have been the first up of part 2 of the Avengers DLC. After War of Wakanda, they could have been like, we're doing Guardians of the Galaxy instead of its own game. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they decided to do it that way. Doesn't look good. And it's not going to look good for them financially, I don't think.
And they spent so much time of their presentation to this year at E3 on just that. It was never ending. Like they did, like I said, they showed us 12 to 15 minutes of gameplay, and then they showed us some banter and conversation between the characters, and then they showed us more gameplay for another 3 or 4 minutes after that.
Yeah.
It was just never ending, and I wasn't sure what the purpose of all of it was.
Right. It looked like an upgraded Telltale game as far as you controlling Peter Quill, and you have to decide what you're going to do as far as your actions go. In the gameplay trailer that they showed, it showed Drax was throwing Rocket over a chasm, essentially to get to the other side to open up this bridge. You could have talked him out of that or let him go. Very Telltale-like. So we'll see. I don't, definitely more action than a Telltale game, but it's not something that I think is going to be a good title.
Nope, completely agree, and very disappointing and confusing.
So the next up that they showed off was Final Fantasy. They did a Final Fantasy 1 through 6 announcement, which would have been awesome if they were bringing those over to the Xbox or bringing those over to the PlayStation or even on the Nintendo Switch, so like you and I do with our trophies and achievements, we can go for those, play them again. It just seems like it would be a lot of fun. Do it like a Final Fantasy pack, essentially, like a retro pack that a lot of these games are doing. Unfortunately, all we got for that was that it was going to be a Steam and mobile release only, which deflated the wind. It deflated the Steam, the wind out of the sails a little bit. It didn't. It was very disappointing.
Very. It's disappointing that it's not going to be. Not only is it not coming to consoles. How long was the presentation on that? Literally 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then they were moving on. Yeah, it may not have even been
enough to showcase the titles and their cover image, and then they move on. Then they followed up with Legend of Mana, which is supposed to be coming out in June 24th on the Switch. That's in a week or so, right? Why didn't you give us more information on that?
Yeah, and it was another one. It was maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was enough where you kind of see the world a little bit, the tree that is a major point in the Legend of Mana series, and then that was it. You got the title, moving on. And then they put us right into the Avengers game, which we've already discussed, but very disappointing. There should have been more meat on that. It started at 12. What it is, 12:15? So that was an hour?
No way. Was it really?
Yeah.
So if that was an hour, then they spent 25 minutes just on Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe 30 minutes.
So, whatever. Yeah, because the rest of it was just kind of nothing. They talked about the Hitman game, the Hitman Sniper. It's going to be a multiplayer game. You're a squad that's been sent out to try to find Agent 47. What kind of other... that's it. That's all we got on there. And that was based on the cinematic trailer where you see a sniper and then you see 3 people behind them. Also looks like snipers. Granted, the game is called Hitman Sniper, but okay, then we're moving on, right? They're bringing Near Reincarnation to mobile only. Awesome, I guess. Then they moved on. Warriors of Light for the mobile game, Bravious Exodus. Again, that was such a mess. They just kind of flashed a bunch of images on the screen and then moved on from there. The game that actually looked interesting after that was Babylon's Fall. Right, that's exclusive to PlayStation. Although it does look like a dungeon crawler where you upgrade weapons and armor. It is going to be a games as a service title, is what it showed, live service title. So we'll see if I even jump on that at all, because that's not something that I'm a huge fan of generally. But the concept of it has premise. It's interesting for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no real feedback on that because it's not something I'm going to play. So
yeah,
it doesn't look interesting to me. It looks like it's a rehash of games they've made dozens of times in the past, and they're just putting new names on the characters and saying, okay, buy this from us. Please play this again. I'm good.
So they did show off a slightly extended trailer for Life is Strange True Colors, but based off of the last Square-Enix Presents, we didn't actually get any more information, really. We knew that the character was going to be an empath. We knew that she was going to be able to read different people's feelings, that her brother had died. She's going to try to, it's like a weird mystery. She's going to find out somebody had murdered him or set him up to die and whatever. Nothing really came of that. They showcased a little bit of the high-res models for Life is Strange, for the remastered collection that's going to be coming up to the consoles. That's pretty cool, but I mean, I don't know if I'd return to that world after I've already done it on the PlayStation 3 and such, and PlayStation 4. Just, we'll see. And then the last game that they showed, which actually had some interest for me, was Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. As you stated, you saw some of those character models that look like Final Fantasy. We were trying to figure out, I was like, oh man, this character wants to kill Chaos, and he's being very chaotic on his own. And I was like, he's a very angry character. It gave me some sort of semblance of Devil May Cry a little bit. But
I can see that.
He's really pissed off about something. So
yeah, he kept. I mean, the trailer was just him in game fighting and just repeating, like, I need to kill Chaos. Okay, I need to hunt him down, kill Chaos. That's my goal. That's my mission, is to kill Chaos. It's like, okay, that's cool. It's kind of strange that you're being rather chaotic about it, but okay, right. I get what you're trying to do. And then we started seeing, like you mentioned, the models of traditional Final Fantasy enemies, like bombs and things of that, and wolves, things of that nature, that were very distinct Final Fantasy creatures. It's like, okay, well, this is obviously going to be a Final Fantasy game of some sort. And then we just kept moving on, and they finally showed Origin, and as you stated, he's the antagonist for 1 and 4, I believe you mentioned, correct?
Yeah, it was Garland from Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 4.
By a different name.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be
the origin part of it. I think,
exactly. This might be the origin of Garland before Final Fantasy 1. So that has my interest. When I did see him, I was like, holy shit, that looks very much like the Final Fantasy villain, Garland. I was like, if it's not, we'll see. You know what I mean? Like, some designer had heavy influence on that one for sure, but it looked interesting. I think I will probably pick up, Final Fantasy God of War, that's and try to kill Chaos by being Chaos.
Fair enough. It just, the entire presentation from Square Enix was confusing and clunky, and it seemed like a lot of what they're doing is they're just remastering things instead of, like, obviously they came out with some original stuff. I get it, like Babylon's Fall, Stranger of Paradise. Well, even Stranger of Paradise, it's kind of like a rehash, right? Like, it's a new game.
I mean, it's an expansion within the Final Fantasy world. That's their flagship, essentially.
For sure. And they should keep making games for it, but don't keep making the same game with new skin on it and trying to sell it over and over. That's something that always kind of bothers me. And listen, I've heard that criticism for Halo. Like, I get it. It's repetitive, but at least Halo tries to innovate with, like, oh, we're going to introduce dual wielding in Halo 2 now. And we're going to, here's a different type of grenade called a spike grenade. Like, they try to introduce things that are different every game. Whereas I feel like Square Enix for a while now has just been like, okay, well, here's a repackaged version of something we made in the past. Hope you enjoy this again.
Yeah, and speaking of remakes, you know, there was no information, no teaser, no anything for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 or whatever it is that they're going to call it, 30, 65, 400 days under 6, the Square-Enix titles that they like to do. I wanted to see more of that, especially with the Intergrade, the intermission episode that they just released this last week. It would have been cool to talk on that, say, hope everybody's enjoying this. More, even if they didn't show anything, kind of like give us more information. More information on the Final Fantasy VII universe is going to be incoming soon. Kind of give us some sort of expectation. They were missing Final Fantasy 16. Once they showcased that right before the PlayStation 5 was announced, they gave us this awesome look at Final Fantasy 16, which was going to be back to the basics as far as being a high fantasy title. We didn't get any information on that. It just felt like they did rush a lot of content in certain aspects. They dragged on content in the terms of Guardians of the Galaxy, and they missed out on some of the titles that we wanted to see more of.
Here, completely agree. I have nothing to add beyond that because that pretty much sums up the mess that was that presentation.
Right. So that's it for this episode of the Jabberbox covering the Square Enix Presents. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, that notification button, that like button, rate it as well, and help us grow our audience over time. Be sure to check us out over on patreon.com/dandydigital and hit us up on social network by searching Dandy Digital, and we will see you all next time.